Back again for the next video in my series, Toxic Siblings, What the Heck Happened? Today is going to be the controversial one of the controversial ones, the middle child. Let's say you come from a family with 3 or more siblings, the middle child. What the heck happens to the middle child in a toxic, dysfunctional, or narcissistic family? Let's do it. So the stereotype is that the middle child is the child that is overlooked. This is the child that is forgotten, that gets the least amount of love, that gets the least amount of attention in any family, but especially a toxic, dysfunctional, or narcissistic one. And that stereotype is true to some extent, right? It is common for some middle children to experience being the forgotten child, the one that gets overlooked in favor of the accomplishments of the eldest and the babiness of the youngest. But that's not the only role that we can find the middle child playing, right? As we know, in a toxic family, a narcissistic family, anyone can play any role at any time depending on the needs of the narcissist. And we can see that with the middle child as well. It's not uncommon for a middle child to go from being the forgotten child to, let's say, for example, the black sheep. Because some middle children resent being overlooked and they might act out. And as they act out, rebel, kind of fight against the system, that can turn them into the black sheep or even the scapegoat. But the middle child can also be the golden child. Take my family, for example. In my family, one of my older brothers, who happened to be the middle child out of all of us, was the golden child. He was the favored child of my narcissistic mother. Why was that? Well, he looked the most like her, for sure. He basically had her face, and he was absolutely the one wired the most like her, had the most similar issues, yada, yada, yada. Because he looked like her and he was wired like her, he got a lot of special treatment for her. For example, remember I told you my mother wouldn't even drive a few hours when I was in college to come and see me in the hospital, but she quit her job to move in with this brother and take care of his children and yada, all that good stuff. Now, because he was the golden child, he was also the one that was most attached to my narcissistic mother. It was the weirdest thing to watch because they had such similar behaviors and yet they hated each other and yet they couldn't be separated from each other. And being the golden child also made him the most willing to be manipulated by my narcissistic mother. He was willing to eat the victim stories up hook, line, and sinker and might even still do that to this day. So what happens between the middle child and their siblings then? What happens to these relationships because of this toxic family dynamic? Well, it really depends on where the middle child sits. If they're the golden child, you might find a lot of competition in their relationships with their other siblings. You might see them trying to control those siblings, tell them what to do, or even selling them out to the narcissist, playing along with the toxic games to maintain that golden child status. If the middle child happens to be the forgotten child, the scapegoat, the black sheep of the family, then what you can find is that they might be resentful of their siblings. It might be a lack of emotional trust. That's very, very common. Things might also just be cold, checked out, distance. This child might go no contact without saying really much at all. That comes with a lot of adults when you're the middle child experiencing any of these roles in a toxic, dysfunctional, or narcissistic family. If you're the middle child who's been a black sheep, a scapegoat, or the forgotten child, you might find yourself becoming really hyper independent in relationships, not being able to open up to people, to trust them, to rely on them. You might become super, super competitive and have this drive, this need to prove yourself, to stand out because you didn't feel like you got that attention in the home. On the flip side of that, a middle child who has played any of these roles in the narcissistic family can also find themselves becoming codependent, hyper reliant on others. They didn't learn those safe boundaries in the home, and so they just throw it all on other people and expect other people to kind of fix those wounds and make them happy, which doesn't work. And as is the case in my household, it's not uncommon for the middle child to pick up those same narcissistic tendencies if they don't do a lot of unpacking and get some therapy. What do you think? Have you seen these dynamics play out in the middle child in your family? Let me know in the comments and make sure you follow for more.